Amos, chapter 3. He of the reverence for cookie baking abilities. We'll read and come back. Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mitzrayim. Move the microphone closer. Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mitzrayim, saying, You alone have I known of all the clans of the earth, therefore I punish you for all your crookedness. Would two walk together without having met? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of his den unless he has caught? Does a bird fall into a snare on the earth where there is no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the earth if it has not captured prey? If a shofar is blown in the city, do the people not tremble? If there is calamity in the city, shall not Yahweh have done it? For the Master Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. A lion has roared, who is not afraid? The Master Yahweh has spoken, who would not prophesy? Cry out at the palaces of Ashdod and the palaces in the land of Mitzrayim, and say, Gather on the mountains of Shomeron, and see many unrests in her midst, and the oppressed ones within her. But they do not know to do what is right, declares Yahweh, these who store up plunder and loot in their palaces. Therefore thus said the Master Yahweh, an enemy even all around the land, and he shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. Thus said Yahweh, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of the lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomeron to be rescued, in the corner of a bed, or on the edge of a couch. Hear the witness against the house of Jacob, declares the Master Yahweh, the Elohim of hosts. For in the day that I visit Israel for their transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Bethel. And the horns of the slaughter place shall be broken, and they shall fall to the ground. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall be swept away, declares Yahweh. Amos, again, fig tree farmer, written around 765 BC in the land of Tekoa or Tekoba, depending on which translation you have, right on the border between the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. So he's on the northern end of Judah, which is to the south, the southern end of Israel, the house of Israel, to the north. So he's in this interesting place geographically, which provides an interesting perspective. This is about 40 to 45 years pre-Assyrian exile. So again, A, we know it's prophecy because it came to be true. B, it wasn't prophecy a week before the bad thing happened, when any moron with 4 brain cells cobbled together could say, hey guys, I think something bad's about to happen. This is 40 to 45 years before the exile. Remember, he's a contemporary of both Isaiah and Hosea. But unlike Isaiah and Hosea, Amos is just a common man. He's not of the school of the prophets. He's not in the Levitical priesthood. He's not of the line of Aaron. He's just a guy who's a shepherd and a fig tree farmer. And there's probably a lesson in that for us. Excuse me. Still dealing with the after effects of whatever, COVID, the flu, post-nasal drip, whatever it is. All right. Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken. Okay. Yah speaks. His word will not return to him void. In other words, you can take this to the bank. Against you, O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Mitzrayim, from Egypt. So, rather than Israel meaning the house of Israel versus the house of Judah, Ezekiel 37 and the two sticks, the two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, he's talking to all of Israel actual. Israel actual being the descendants of Jacob, Jacob, who is renamed Yisrael, Genesis 32. Saying, you alone have I known of all the clans of the earth. Therefore I punish you for all your crookedness. This flies in the face of this Big C Christian church, modern Christendom concept of God will keep the bad thing from happening to me. Insert the bad thing here, whatever it might be. My Jesus would never do that. It's like, well, you haven't been reading your Bible. What Yahuwah is saying here is, I know you and you know me. Therefore, because you haven't done what I've told you to do, you have no excuse because you know me and I know you. This is Proverbs 24:12, cross-reference here. Accountability and understanding track together. In fact, Proverbs 24:12 was an unlock for me when it first really stuck. Because, and we're here, so we'll just go here. Because there are many people who have not had the understanding that we have today, who are good, fine people of Elohim in a different generation, if you will. And it begs the question, if they didn't know what we know, are they saved? Are they in the kingdom? Will we see them in the millennial reign and in eternity? Proverbs 24:12. If you say, see, we did not know this, would not he, Yahweh, who weighs the hearts, discern it? He who watches over your life, would he not know it? And shall he not repay man according to his work? In other words, accountability and understanding track together. You can't be held accountable for something you don't know. Conversely, you will be held accountable for the things that you do know. And proof of what you know is in your works. And shall he not repay man according to his work? And we could go on a major rabbit hole here, because the modern Christian church loves to denigrate what they call works-based theology. And the problem with that is that we are admonished all throughout the New Testament, in both the words of the apostles and the words of Messiah, that yes, in fact, works do matter. James, I will show you belief. I will show you my faith by what I do. Okay? Now, we don't do the works because we're justified by them. This is the teachings of Paul. By grace through faith, we are saved, lest any man should boast. We do the works as proof of the fact that we're saved. Okay? Out of obedience to Messiah. 1 Peter 2:21. The Messiah having suffered for your sins that you might walk in his steps. Walk is a verb. Walk implies action. It means we're going to do what Messiah did. We're going to do the works of Messiah. Is that works-based theology? Well, you're commanded to follow in his steps. Right? If you are a follower of Christ, that makes who the leader? Yeah. Mashiach, Messiah. Following implies we're going somewhere, we're doing something, doesn't it? It's hard to follow him from your couch. And as we're going to see, Amos, on behalf of Yahweh, doesn't think too highly of air quote believers who just sit their asses on their couch. Revelation 22, verse 12. Messiah speaking. And see, I am coming speedily, and my reward is with me to give to each according to his work. I'm the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those doing his, Yahuwah's commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. Unto the tree of what? The tree of life? Rabbi, what shall I do to have everlasting life? Matthew 19, verse 17. If you wish to enter into life, guard the commands. Oh, interesting. But Proverbs 24:12. Accountability and understanding track together. So back to Amos 3, verse 2. You alone I have known of all the clans of the earth. Therefore I punish you for all your crookedness. You know better. You know the rules of this family, and you chose to go against them and do your own will, not to do what Dad told you to do, and therefore you're going to get grounded and or catch a whooping. Verse 3, would two walk together without having met? Two cannot walk together unless they be agreed, right? 2 Corinthians. I have big thumbs. The Bible has small pages, and I have a wound on my left thumb, so flipping pages is going to be challenging today. 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14. Do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness and lawlessness, and what fellowship has light with darkness? Now we think about that in our left-right relationships with other people. But our left-right relationships are modeled on our vertical relationship with Yah, with the Creator. If we're not to become unevenly yoked with unbelievers, what does that say about Him? If we're not to have partnership between righteousness and lawlessness, what does that say about Him? And what fellowship has light with darkness? If we're not supposed to fellowship with darkness, what does that say about Him? Would two walk together without having met? And he's going to make the point. Hey, I've been walking with you. I walked with you for 40 years in the wilderness. So you, again, this is just foot stomping. Hey, you can't say you didn't know. You knew. And then the undeniability, the obviousness with which they knew is then exemplified through verse 8, 4 through 8. These are all obvious things. Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of the den unless he has caught? Does a bird fall into a snare on the earth where there is no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the earth if it has not captured prey? If a shofar is blown in the city, do the people not tremble? If there's calamity in the city, shall not Yahweh have done it? Now verse 7 here. For the master Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. I want to just pause here for a moment in verse 7. Because I believe that this is accurate, biblically true. But I also believe, and this is something that we've been discussing over and over again as we've been working our way through the major and minor prophets. Saying you're a prophet, or somebody else saying you're a prophet, does not make you a prophet. And your ability to read trends in the stock market or geopolitical situations in 2024, or afterwards, if you're watching this later, does not make one a prophet. If one has historical data from the New York Stock Exchange and extrapolates that data, that doesn't make you a prophet. Again, Amos is prophesying that Israel is going to go into exile 45 years before it happens. Joel, over 100 years before it happens. Okay? And there's consistency in their word. It comes from Yah. And then the word that they spoke is verifiable against readily available history. That's a prophet. And so we need to be careful not to ascribe prophet status to people who can extrapolate data. Okay? Especially relating to worldly things. Notice that Yah is not talking here about the stock market or the markets in Jerusalem. He's not talking about geopolitical situations. He's saying, hey, you guys transgressed me and I'm going to whip your ass for it. And it is due because you knew what to do and you didn't do it. And that is consistent, congruent throughout the word. That's a biblical prophet. Notice that Balaam, and here's another thing. Just because somebody claims to be a man of Elohim, Balaam, if we go back to the book of Numbers, approximately chapter 25-ish, Balaam the false prophet and Balak, the king of Moab, Balaam prophesies in the name of Yahweh. But he's trying to curse the children of Israel. And he can't say anything against the children of Israel because the capital M messenger of Elohim is the one who is putting the words in his mouth. This is the same capital M messenger of Elohim that, and I would submit to you, this is Yeshua, who led the Israelites out of bondage from Egypt. And it's the same capital M messenger of Elohim in the book of Genesis that gives the triune blessing to Abraham, that your seeds will be like the sands of the seashore, and that you will possess the gates of your enemy, and in you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Well, go back and look at what Balaam says about the children of Israel. They're like the sands of the seashore, and they're going to possess the gates of their enemies, and in them all the nations of the earth will be blessed. That's congruency over the course of hundreds of years because it's the same source, the capital M messenger of Elohim. But Balaam is still considered a false prophet because his heart was not in the right place. He was not a servant of Elohim. And so again, let's be careful who we ascribe prophet status to. Prophets are rare, very rare. Biblical prophets are very rare. For the Master Yahweh does no matter unless he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. A lion has roared, who is not afraid? The Master Yahweh has spoken, who would not prophesy? Now, remember that prophesy, there's two biblical definitions of prophecy. One is to say this shall come to pass in the name of Yahweh in the future. The other is to speak the word of Yahweh. Okay? So if Yahweh is spoken, who would not repeat it? Well, not Israel, not in this case, because they're not following Yah, which is why they go into the Assyrian exile. Cry out at the palaces of Ashdod and the palaces in the land of Mitzrayim. All right, so what's an Ashdod? Ashdod is a biblical name place that we've encountered many times before in this book. Basically, it was one of the capital cities of the Philistines. It was also, before it was settled by the Philistines, a city of the Anakim. Anakim, Rephaim, Nephilim, the descendants of fallen angels. Not a great place. If you're supposed to be worshiping Yah, not a great place. Same thing with Mitzrayim, Egypt. The palaces of Ashdod, the palaces of Mitzrayim. This brings to mind this picture of largesse and leisure and wealth in the lap of pagan idolatry. Cry out at the palaces in Ashdod and at the palaces in the land of Mitzrayim and say, gather on the mountains of Shomeron, Samaria, the false capital of the 10 northern tribes in the land grant of Israel, as compared to Judah to the south, so the northern kingdom. And see the many unrests in her midst and the oppressed ones within her. And this is, again, a common theme. We talked about this in Amos 1:2. Almost the sense of, in today's day, what we would refer to as like social justice, that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and as a result of this, that, the poor are being oppressed because the leadership is not following the word of Yah. I could do 3 hours on that one topic alone, our current geopolitical situation in the United States of America and the world. I hope that it's obvious what my commentary would be. Gather on the mountains of Shomron and see the many unrest in her midst and the oppressed ones within her. But they do not know to do what is right, declares Yahweh. Those who store up plunder and loot in their palaces. Excuse me. Why would the leadership not know what to do, what is right? Well, they haven't been worshiping Yah. They haven't been following Yahweh. And whose job is it to educate the peoples? It's the priesthood. Also, the king has multiple responsibilities, but one of them is what? To write his own exclusively male, gender, patriarchy. Oh, the patriarchy. Because when the heathens are at the gate, you want men to deal with that problem. The king has a job to write his own copy of the Torah, so he can never say he didn't know it. And there's the kinesthetic, repetitive anchoring of the king writing his own copy in his own hand. But they don't know what to do, what is right, because they've fallen from their relationship with Yah. They're going through the motions, but they don't have a relationship. We're going to see later in Amos. They're going through the motions, all right, and Yah could care less. And there's an admonishment there for us in our own personal walk. Are you going through the motions, or are you worshiping? Are you being obedient? And one of the best definitions of worship that I've heard, because especially if you have a big C Christian church background on worship, we think worship is music and prayer and hands raised, and it's not that, but it's not just that. One of the best definitions of worship I've ever heard is worship is you denying yourself and following Messiah. Not doing what you want to do, not doing what your flesh wants to do, but remembering that we are spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience, not physical beings that have temporary occasional spiritual experiences. That's a big deal to me, because I'm just as human as the rest of y'all. And I have a propensity to sin just like the rest of y'all do. Whether that be with my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my hands. I was just talking about this with Dr. Trevor on a podcast. Anger is an old friend of mine, and I can wear it like armor. And I'm well acquainted with violence. There are times when violence is justified for the preservation of life, but there's many more times where it's not. So worship is when I do what the Word tells me to do in the model of the Word made flesh, at the conviction of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, instead of what I want to do. Something you might consider. But they do not know what to do. They do not know to do what is right, declares Yahweh. Those who store up plunder and loot in their palaces. And therefore, thus said the Master Yahweh, an enemy even all around the land. And he shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. Okay, so thus said the Master Yahweh. This is prophecy, and Yah's word will not return to him void. 2 words for you. Assyria and Babylon. Now remember, this is 45 years before the Assyrian exile. Remember Elijah and, what's his name? Gehazi. His little dude, his second in command. And they're at Shomron, and the city is being surrounded. And all the land around is falling to the Assyrians. And Gehazi says to Elijah, they've got us surrounded. And Elijah says, Gehazi, look. And Gehazi looks, and the scales fall from his eyes, and Gehazi realizes, no, the Assyrians are surrounded by this angelic army of Yahweh of hosts, the Lord Yahweh Sabaoth, the warrior Yah. Exodus 15 verse 3, Yahweh is a warrior, Yahweh is his name. And Gehazi realizes, oh, the bad guys are surrounded. And that night, one angel goes throughout the camp of the Assyrians and slays 185,000 men. One angel. But still, the northern kingdoms fall. And we have the Assyrian exile. An enemy even all around the land, and he shall bring down your strength from you, and your palaces shall be plundered. Thus said Yahweh, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so the children of Israel who dwell in Shomeron to be rescued. In the corner of a bed and on the edge of a couch. So there's an image here. A shepherd rescuing a lamb or a goat or whatever, a piece of livestock from the mouth of a lion. But all that's left is what has been torn to bits. So shall Israel who dwells in Shomeron, Samaria, be rescued. In the same way, there'll be nothing but bits left. And those bits will be on the corner of a bed or on the edge of a couch. The bed and the couch are not something that are revered in Scripture. It's indicative of laziness and luxury. There's a lesson in that for us as well. Not that sleep isn't important. It is. Not that you shouldn't rest every 7th day on Shabbat. You should. But those should not be your 2 primary places of residence inside your domicile. Your bed and your couch. 6 days ye shall labor. And there's this interesting turn of phrase here. As a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear. So something that has been torn. Exodus 22. Because turns out the word is congruent, and there's a Torah for this. Exodus 22, start at verse 10. When a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any beast to watch over, and it dies, or is injured, or is driven away while no one is looking, let an let an oath of Yahweh be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he does not repay. But if it is indeed stolen from him, he repays to its owner. If it is torn to pieces, then let him bring it for evidence. He does not repay whatever was torn. The shepherd, the overseer, is not responsible for whatever is torn that's in his care, unless he's been lax in his duties. And this goes back to the contract that the Father has with men of Elohim. We see this with Ezekiel and others. The man of Elohim has to speak the word of Yah. Has to. If he does not, the blood of those who would perish is on the head of the man of Elohim, the shepherd, the Ra'ah, pastor as they translate it today. If he doesn't speak the word of Elohim, then the blood of all those people is on his head. But if he does speak the word of Elohim, if he has been diligent in his duties, and some of the flock are torn to pieces, for that he does not repay, because it is on their head. If they've been disobedient sheep and they go outside of the fold, or they wander from the flock and they're torn to pieces, that's not the responsibility of the man of Elohim. He did his job. Their blood is on their own head now. If it is torn to pieces, then let him bring it for evidence. He does not repay what was torn. And so the point that Amos is making in the word of Yah here in 3:12, thus said Yahweh, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion. So the shepherd still went after the one who was torn to pieces. 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so are the children of Israel who dwell in Shomeron to be rescued. I told you. Amos is saying, Yah's saying, I've told you guys. I told you what to do. You're not doing it. You alone I have known of all the clans of the earth. Therefore I punish you for all your crookedness. I told you. I know you. You know me. You didn't do what I told you to do. Oh, and you got torn to pieces. Imagine that. There's no repayment for that. That's not on the head of the shepherd. That's not on the head of the man of Elohim. That's on the disobedient sheep that went and frolicked on the other side of the hill over here instead of staying with the flock. Hear the witness against the house of Jacob, declares the master, Yahuwah, the Elohim of hosts. And there's that phrase again. And whenever we see the Elohim of hosts, that's the Lord Yahuwah Sabaoth. And that means the Lord of hosts. These hosts are the hosts of heaven, the angelic armies of heaven. And if you doubt that those exist, I don't know, read anything from Genesis to Revelation. Specifically in Revelation, Revelation 12? Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. 12:7. And there came to be fighting in the heavens. Michael, and his messengers, angels, fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought. But they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in the heaven any longer. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Angels fight. They're pretty good at it, too. Hear the witness against the house of Jacob, declares the master Yahuwah, the Elohim of hosts. Again, Exodus 15, verse 3. Yahuwah is a warrior. Yahuwah is his name. From the day I visit Israel for her transgressions. I can't wait for the glory of the coming of the Lord. From the day I visit Israel for their transgressions. Now, this is not only prophetic near tense for Amos, but this is prophetic future tense for us because we are Israel. And I've smashed that home 1,000 times. Genesis 32, Romans 11, Ephesians 2. What do you mean Ephesians 2? Let's go there. Come on, thumb. Ephesians 2. Starting verse 10. For we are his workmanship, Yahuwah's workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua, unto good works. There's that again. Which Elohim prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Prepared beforehand. Beforehand what? What good works were prepared before Yeshua? Oh, that's right. The Torah, the law, because sin is transgression of the law. 1 John 3, verse 4. For we are Yahuwah's workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua, unto good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Now, this is to the church at Ephesus after the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. But one of y'all commented last week, I wish Bear would read Galatians on camera. Newsflash, homie, I already have. There's this thing called the YouTube search bar. You should use it. I've read the entirety of the New Testament on camera. Stuff like that drives me nuts. I think a lot of people think that I only read the Old Testament. Like 30 seconds of research would clear that up for you instead of leaving a retarded YouTube comment. Go watch that video. Go the whole series on Galatians and Ephesians and Colossians and Romans and Hebrews. Yeah, I've read the entire New Testament on camera. I'm well versed. with what Shaul of Tarsus taught, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. I think the problem is most people aren't. Most people aren't well versed with what Shaul taught. Shaul was a genius, and he taught Torah in the New Testament to early believers in Messiah at a doctorate level. And most people are kindergartners in their faith. We've talked about this on camera, but we'll go here because we're here. To graduate from kindergarten into the first grade requires on average 1,260 hours of participation in class. If you read the Bible 2 hours a week, like read it 2 hours a week, and I don't mean like play church on Sunday morning, but you read the Bible 2 hours a week in order to accrue 1,260 hours of dwell time would take you 12 years and 40 days to go from kindergarten to first grade. One of the advantages I have over many people is not that I'm smarter, not that I'm any better than anybody else, is I just spend more time in my Bible. I have more dwell time. On average, at least an hour a day. Yesterday, I'm recording this on a Sunday morning. Yesterday on Shabbat, I believe I spent 7 hours in my word. Like in it, not just flipping the pages, skimming the words, in it, deep study. So I'm maybe a third grader or a fourth grader instead of a kindergartner. Shaul taught at a doctorate level. And so don't let your kindergarten understanding get in the way of the absolutely jaw-dropping wisdom that Shaul of Tarsus has put into the New Testament. If you don't understand the Bible, the problem's with you, not the Bible. Okay? If I don't understand the Bible, the problem's with me, not the Bible. Ephesians 2 verse 10, for we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua unto good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Therefore remember that you, once nations in the flesh, to be the esteem of all nations. We just talked about the triune blessing given to Abraham by the messenger of Elohim in Genesis. Therefore remember that you, once nations in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision, by what is called the circumcision, by the Yehudim, the religious Jews, who were not the friends of the early church. And I would submit not friends of the church now, but that's another hour and a half long rabbit hole. Therefore remember that you, once nations in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at that time you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants, plural, covenants, of promise, having no expectation and without Elohim in the world. But now Messiah Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah. So without Messiah, you were not Israel. Now that you have Messiah, what does that make you? Oh, but Paul said, now that you have Messiah, what does that make you? Yeah. And God said, who does not change, Malachi 3 verse 6, there is one Torah for the Israelite and the sojourner within his gates. And just because you were taught wrong on Sunday morning, that the law was nailed to the cross, just like everybody else was, just like I was, doesn't mean that's what the Bible actually says. Because sin is lawlessness. And Messiah removed sin from us, our lawlessness. He removed the curse of the law. What's the curse of the law? It's death. Shall we sin? Shall we be lawless all the more so that grace may abound? No, God forbid you continue to sin. What does Paul say? I knew not sin but by the law, meaning you got to know the law and you got to do it. Because we're supposed to walk in it. For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua unto good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Because we are Israel. Because we believe in Messiah. Because we are Romans 11 grafted in. Because we, Genesis 32, have struggled with Elohim, overcome with Elohim, and are ruling with Elohim. All that to say, we are Israel now, present tense. So when we go back to Amos chapter 3, which hopefully you had a finger stuck in, as Amos is speaking in approximately 765 BC, he's prophesying in the near-term prophetic, 40 to 45 years, when Israel, that people group then, were going to go into the Assyrian exile, comma, he's also prophesying into the future for us, now, present tense, Israel. For in the day I visit Israel, that's us, for our transgressions, I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Beit El, Bethel. And the horns of the slaughter place shall be broken, and they shall fall to the ground. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall be swept away, declares Yahweh. What's his problem with Beit El? What's his problem with Bethel? Now, note that on the map, Bethel and Bethlehem are not the same place. They're a few miles apart from one another. Beit El, Beit is house, El, Elohim. The house of Elohim is Beit El or Bethel. Bethlehem or Beit El-Lachaim, the house of the Elohim of life. You see the little compare contrast here? Yeshua is from the house of Elohim for life. Bethlehem. A little manger. Versus Beit El, Bethel. Remember, somebody in the New Testament, what good comes out of Bethel? Was one of the questions. And now, with Bethel Church and all of that, yeah, I will reserve commentary on that. Bethel was the house of false worship. So the government capital, if you will, of the northern kingdoms, the house of Israel, was Shomeron. But Beit El, Bethel, was where their temples to false gods were. I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places of Beit El. Yeah, they weren't slaughtering the Elohim. And remember, they're not supposed to slaughter the Elohim outside of Jerusalem. They're all supposed to come together 3 times per year. Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot. Appointed times, Leviticus 23. But they don't. Instead, they're literally worshiping idols. They have literal churches, assemblies to false gods. I shall also punish concerning the slaughter places in Beit El. Now remember, this is the same group of people that walked through the wilderness with Elohim for 40 years. They know he's real. He knows they're real. And yet, and still, they serve false gods. And the horns of the slaughter place, these being the slaughter places for this pagan worship, shall be broken and shall fall to the ground. Now horns in prophecy represent power. You see this all throughout Revelation. And the beast had 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns. And horns represent power or power centers. So the horns of the slaughter place being broken and falling to the ground is breaking the power or perceived power, because it has no actual power, of this pagan worship. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house. I don't know about y'all, but I guess I'm bougie. I currently have 2 houses, and that's because where I sit, my old house is 30 feet away from this new one that I'm in, and the old house is going to get smashed into a pile with a track hoe because it's falling apart, which is why we built the new one. I don't have a summer house and a winter house. I've known people, I do know some people now that have multiple houses, right? Like, we're going to go skiing in Vail at the ski lodge at our winter home, and then we've got our lake house down in Florida, and then blah 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 blah. We really like to spend some time in Montana each year. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against people who do well in life. at all. I am unapologetically trying to do well in life. On the business side, I do not charge nor am I compensated for the spiritual side, the ministry side, whether that's our 501c3s, Grindstone Ministries, and Caleb House. I am the president of both of those organizations. I do not get paid any money by them. I do not monetize any of my YouTube videos. I don't charge people to talk to me as a pastor, because while it is lawful to not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain, I think when you get money involved with matters of Elohim, it skews the message. Because if you were to pay me to hear what I had to say about Yah, at some point, I'm going to realize if I say these certain things and I don't say these certain things, you're more likely to pay me more money. And now I've monetized your eternal soul. And there's a problem with that. There's a big problem with that. So I don't do that. But on the business side of things, I'm commanded to leave my children an inheritance, right? An inheritance is a physical thing. I've had brothers who have said, well, I want the inheritance that my children receive to be that they know Jesus and that they love him. And I think that's beautiful. But that's a separate command. That's raise them up in the way that they should go so they do not depart from it when they are older. An inheritance is a physical thing. Lands and flocks and herds in a war chest. That's an inheritance. And so on the business side of things, I'm unapologetically trying to do well, because it is a good man that leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That's biblical. So I have to support this current generation and have enough horsepower to be able to support not just me and my wife, but our children and our grandchildren. So I'm trying to do that. I would submit I am doing that. So I don't have anything against people who do well in life. Yah has something against people who do well in life but don't serve him in the process. Now, it's implied here that you can do well in life and serve Yah. It's the love of money. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil, not money. But as we've seen here in Amos chapter 3, these people feign love for Elohim, but in practice don't actually love him. And we know that they don't love him because of their works, because of what they're doing. I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall be swept away. All of this largesse, all of this vanity, all of this expense for the sake of expense doesn't serve Elohim. And he'll destroy it to make his point, so that you have no distractions left. There's nothing but you and Elohim. I've seen it happen. I don't care, me personally, and I don't believe Elohim cares either. If you want to become a billionaire, go for it. But do it righteously and serve him in the process, because every dime on this earth belongs to him. It's all his. Every single piece of silver belongs to him. And all things work together for his glory and the good of those that love him. You don't have resources. Yah has resources that he has put in your hand for stewardship to serve the kingdom of Elohim. And I would submit to you that stewardship is multiplication. And we see this with the parable of the talents. And I guess since we're 50 minutes into this video, we're just doing Amos chapter 3 today. And that's okay. I think it's worth spending a little bit of time to chew the meat rather than just to plow through it, read it in 5 minutes and go, there you go, guys, that's Amos chapter 3. The parable of the talents. Yeshua, one of his many parables in the New Testament, is about the manager of the house who goes away on a long journey, and he has 3 servants, and he gives one talent, Now, a talent is not a small sum, by the way. Approximately 77.2 to 77.6 pounds. In this case is of silver. But it's a lot. Okay. It's twice this kettlebell of silver. It's not a small amount of silver. One guy gets 1 talent. Another guy gets 2 talents. And another guy gets 5 talents. Which already tells you that the master had an understanding of the individual capabilities of his servants. That's a big part of the parable there. How come that guy has 1 talent and that guy has 5? Because it's what they were capable of stewarding. Okay? He who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. So the master goes away on a long journey. And the guy that he gave 5 talents to, he comes back. The master comes back and says, Master, you gave me 5 talents. I've worked diligently. I've invested. I've worked hard with the talents you've given me. Here's 10 talents. And people take this to mean talents like giftings, talents, delights, like your inherent abilities, capabilities. And that is part of it. But it's also literally talking about silver, which is money. Okay? And the master says, well done, good and faithful servant. Because you can be trusted with little, you can be trusted with much. The guy that had 2 talents, he says, Master, I've worked hard with what you've given me. And I've turned your 2 talents into 4 talents. And the master, Messiah, says, well done, good and faithful servant. He multiplied. Stewardship is multiplication. The guy that got 1 talent, he said, Master, I know you're a hard man, sowing where you have not reaped and reaping where you have not sown. And I buried your talent in the ground. And I'm happy to present to you back the 1 talent that you gave me. In other words, saying, I didn't lose any. And the master responds, you wicked and lazy servant, you should have at least put my talent with the bankers where I would have earned interest. Take the talent from the guy that has 1 talent and give it to him who has 10. And a lot of people are like, but wait a minute, Jesus said that. That sounds like redistribution of wealth from the poorest to the richest. No, the guy who had 10 talents started with 5. He doubled it. He has demonstrated managership abilities. He can manage, he can steward. Steward is multiplication. In this case, and in all cases, the talent, whether that be giftings, talents, delights, or silver, belongs to the master, belongs to Elohim. What you use it for multiplication, to increase the kingdom of Elohim, that's at the discretion of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. But the point is, multiplication. You don't camp on the talent that you've got. You don't camp on that 1 talent, which 72 pounds of silver. That's a significant amount of silver. Hey, at least I didn't lose it. Yeah, but you didn't work with it either. Take the talent from that guy who's got 1, who didn't multiply it, and give it to the guy who's got 10, because that guy knows how to use it for service to the kingdom of Elohim, to serve the master. So, whatever financial station you find yourself in life, you have resources and you have giftings and talents and delights that come from Elohim that are to be used to be multiplied for the kingdom of Elohim. And so the Bible is not anti-wealth. Abraham was a very wealthy man. David was a king. Solomon was a king. There is an element of poverty, if you will, in the teachings of Yeshua. But I believe that's more about self-deprecation and remembering that we are spiritual beings that have a physical existence, not physical beings that have occasional spiritual existences. Denying oneself by reducing the material goods around us and our dependence on them, which is very Gnostic. And many of the Gnostics and the Essenes, one of the four sects of Judaism in Judea at that time, being the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots, and the Essenes. That's kind of the big four in the region at the time. The Essenes were very anti-material, right? Like John the Baptist, Yochanan, was of the Essenes. Like live in the woods, live in the desert, eat locusts and honey, wear camel hair, that kind of thing. Kind of maybe the original Back to the Land movement, right? Like screw your big screen TV and your iPhone. Like we're going to go into the woods and bushcraft kind of thing. But the Bible's not anti-wealth. It's anti-wealthy people that won't do the will of Elohim for service to the kingdom. And I just wanted to point that out because Yah's like, hey, I'm going to destroy your summer house and your winter house. Your houses of ivory and the great houses, I'm going to trash them all. Not because of the houses, because of what the houses represent. They represent these people who were torn to bits on the corner of their bed and on the edge of their couch because they weren't in service to Elohim. They refused to hear the words of Elohim when they of all people on earth knew best who Yah was, what he was capable of, and what was required of them, and they didn't do it. And instead of worshiping Elohim, they worship false gods. And dude, if that's not a parable for Christianity today, I don't know what is. That's Amos chapter 3. Hopefully by the time we get to chapter 4, this postnasal drip and this cough will be gone. I appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Shalom.